This is a quiet space for listening. There is nothing you need to fix right now. Nothing you need to solve before resting. You can allow the voice to remain in the background. Many people notice that their thoughts become louder at night. Questions repeat. Conversations replay. Future possibilities multiply. During the day, these same thoughts may feel manageable. At night, they feel persistent, heavier, more detailed. Overthinking at night is not a character flaw. It is a change in mental environment. When the world grows quiet, internal activity becomes more noticeable. The brain does not stop working when the body lies down. It shifts focus. During the day, attention is directed outward. Tasks require response. People require interaction. Decisions demand priority. Cognitive energy is spent navigating the external world. At night, that navigation stops. External input decreases, and the brain turns inward. When attention turns inward, thought feels amplified, not because it increased, but because nothing competes with it. Silence creates contrast. Contrast makes mental movement feel louder. The brain also begins preparing for tomorrow. Prediction is a survival function. It asks what needs attention, what might go wrong, what can be improved. These questions are subtle, often automatic, but when the environment is quiet, they become audible. Overthinking often feels like problem solving. The mind searches for better answers, better outcomes, better responses. It believes rehearsal reduces uncertainty. Uncertainty feels uncomfortable, so the brain attempts to eliminate it through repetition. At night, uncertainty feels larger, because there are no distractions reducing its volume. The mind may move through multiple versions of the same scenario, adjusting tone, changing wording, imagining consequences. Each version briefly reduces tension, but not completely, so it tries again. This repetition feels exhausting, but it is not random. It is the brain attempting control in a moment of stillness. Stillness removes external control, so internal control increases. The more the body slows, the more the mind attempts to anticipate. Overthinking at night is not a sign of weakness. It is the mind working without interruption, and uninterrupted thought feels powerful. Overthinking often feels more intense at night because the brain's filtering system becomes less active. During the day, your attention is divided. You respond to messages. You move through tasks. You make small decisions constantly. This division of attention acts like noise. It reduces how clearly you hear your own internal dialogue. At night, that noise disappears. There are no incoming demands, no immediate reactions required, and without interruption, internal dialogue becomes sharper. The brain also shifts into a more reflective mode in the evening. Analytical thinking softens slightly. Imaginative and associative thinking increases. This shift is natural. It prepares the brain for memory consolidation and emotional integration. But reflective thinking is more open-ended. It does not always seek fast solutions. It explores possibilities. Exploration can feel like spiraling, especially when there is no external anchor. Overthinking thrives in open mental space. When there are no deadlines pressing in the moment, the brain begins scanning for unfinished loops. Unfinished loops create tension. A conversation that felt incomplete, a decision that felt uncertain, a future event without a clear outcome. The mind prefers closure. Closure signals safety. When closure is missing, the brain reopens the scenario. It examines it again, not because it enjoys repetition, but because it prefers certainty over ambiguity. Ambiguity feels unstable, and nighttime amplifies instability because visual and social cues are reduced. The body is still. The room is dark. There is no visible reassurance of control. In that environment, the mind increases prediction. Prediction feels like preparation. Preparation feels like control. But control through imagination rarely satisfies completely. So the loop continues. The brain believes that one more adjustment will reduce tension. One more review will solve the discomfort. Yet discomfort often decreases only when the nervous system relaxes. And the nervous system does not relax when prediction is active. This is the paradox of nighttime overthinking. The mind tries to calm itself by planning, but planning keeps it alert, and alertness delays rest. There is also a subtle biological shift that makes overthinking easier after dark. As evening progresses, cortisol levels decrease. Cortisol supports alert focus and structured thinking. When it lowers, mental control becomes softer, not weaker, just less rigid. With reduced structure, thoughts flow more freely. Free-flowing thought can feel creative during the day. At night, it can feel overwhelming because there is nothing directing it. The prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for logical reasoning and impulse control, becomes slightly less active when you are tired. This means emotional and associative parts of the brain have more influence. Associative thinking connects ideas rapidly. One thought links to another. A memory connects to a worry. A worry connects to a future possibility. Future possibility connects to self-doubt. The mind builds chains. During the day, logic interrupts these chains quickly. At night, interruption is slower, so the chain continues longer. This continuation feels like spiraling, but it is simply reduced interference. Fatigue also reduces emotional resilience. When you are tired, small concerns feel larger, not because they grew, but because your buffer is thinner. Buffers require energy. Energy decreases at night. Without buffer, thoughts feel closer. Closer thoughts feel more intense. The darkness of the room reinforces inward focus. Visual stimulation anchors attention externally. When vision is limited, internal imagery becomes more vivid. Internal imagery strengthens emotional reaction. If you imagine a difficult conversation, your body responds subtly. Heart rate may shift slightly. Muscles may tense without notice. That physical response signals importance. Importance keeps the loop active. The brain interprets physical activation as evidence that something needs attention, so it continues reviewing. Overthinking is not random repetition. It is the brain responding to signals it perceives as meaningful. Meaning activates attention. Attention sustains thought, and sustained thought delays relaxation. Yet the brain believes it is helping. It believes that if it can anticipate every outcome, tomorrow will feel safer. But safety does not come from exhausting every possibility. It comes from allowing uncertainty to exist without constant adjustment. And that is difficult when the environment is silent, because silence magnifies every internal signal. Overthinking at night is often connected to something called cognitive looping. A loop begins when a thought feels unresolved. Resolution signals safety. Unresolved thoughts signal potential risk. The brain is designed to revisit what feels unfinished. If a conversation did not end clearly, it may return. If a decision still feels uncertain, it may replay. If a future event has no defined outcome, it may expand into multiple imagined versions. During the day, competing priorities interrupt these loops. At night, nothing interrupts them. The mind has uninterrupted bandwidth. Bandwidth without direction can become rumination. Rumination feels active, but it rarely produces new insight. It revisits the same material from slightly different angles. The brain tries subtle variations. What if I said this instead? What if that happens tomorrow? What if I misunderstood? Each variation briefly creates a sense of movement. Movement feels productive, but the underlying uncertainty remains. Uncertainty is uncomfortable because the brain prefers prediction. Prediction reduces surprise. Surprise requires rapid adaptation. Adaptation consumes energy, so the mind tries to pre-adapt through imagination. It rehearses possible futures to minimize shock. This rehearsal mechanism evolved to protect you. In dangerous environments, anticipation increased survival. Modern life rarely requires that level of vigilance, but the system remains active. Night reduces external signals of safety. There are fewer sounds of activity, less visible movement, less reassurance from interaction. When external safety cues decrease, internal monitoring increases. Monitoring leads to scanning. Scanning leads to reviewing. Reviewing can become looping. Looping can become overthinking. The process is subtle. It does not feel like a conscious choice. It feels automatic, because much of it is. The brain runs predictive simulations continuously. You are usually unaware of them. At night, awareness increases. You notice the simulations, and noticing them can make them feel stronger. The more attention you give a thought, the more vivid it becomes. Vivid thoughts trigger subtle emotional responses. Emotional responses reinforce attention. Attention reinforces the loop. This cycle can continue quietly for long stretches, especially when there is no distraction breaking it. The room remains still. The body remains horizontal. The mind keeps moving, not because it wants to disturb you, but because it has space to move. Another reason overthinking intensifies at night is that the brain shifts from action mode to evaluation mode. During the day, you are engaged in doing, responding, deciding, completing. There is forward movement. Movement reduces reflection. When the day ends, forward movement pauses, and evaluation begins. Evaluation is quieter than action, but it can feel heavier. The brain begins reviewing what happened, not in dramatic ways, often in small details. A tone in someone's voice, a facial expression, a moment where you hesitated. Evaluation is meant to improve future performance. It asks whether something could be adjusted next time. This process is usually efficient, but when combined with fatigue and silence, it can stretch. The mind may zoom in on minor imperfections, not because they were significant, but because they were slightly uncertain. Uncertainty attracts attention. Attention magnifies perception. The darker and quieter the environment, the more magnified internal perception becomes. Overthinking at night is rarely about catastrophic events. It is often about subtle social signals. Did I say too much? Did I say too little? Was I misunderstood? These questions are tied to belonging. Belonging is deeply connected to safety. If belonging feels slightly unstable, the brain attempts correction. Correction happens through mental rehearsal. The mind imagines alternative outcomes, alternative wording, alternative reactions. It searches for the version that feels most secure. But imagined security does not always calm the body, because the body responds to real interaction, not simulation. So the rehearsal repeats. The brain believes repetition will produce certainty, but certainty in imagination rarely satisfies fully. So it tries again. This repetition can feel exhausting, especially when you want rest. The paradox is that the more you try to solve the thought, the more alert the system becomes. Problem solving activates focus. Focus activates the nervous system. Activation delays sleep. The brain is not trying to keep you awake. It is trying to eliminate ambiguity. Ambiguity feels unfinished, and unfinished things draw attention in quiet environments. Night is the quietest environment of the day. So unfinished thoughts rise to the surface, not because they grew stronger, but because nothing is pushing them down. Overthinking is also closely tied to control. Control reduces anxiety. When something feels uncertain, the brain increases analysis. Analysis creates the illusion of control. At night, many things feel outside of control. Tomorrow has not happened yet. Outcomes are undefined. Conversations are unresolved. The mind steps in to simulate control. It replays possibilities. It adjusts responses. It imagines scenarios where you perform better, or prepare better, or anticipate better. This simulation feels productive. It feels like preparation, but preparation without action cannot complete the cycle. The nervous system responds to action, not imagination, so the sense of control remains incomplete. Incomplete control leads to more analysis. There is also a subtle fear beneath nighttime overthinking. Not always dramatic fear, sometimes very small. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear of making a mistake. Fear of losing something. Fear of missing something important. Fear activates monitoring. Monitoring activates thinking. Thinking feels necessary. Necessary thoughts feel urgent. Urgency increases alertness. Alertness keeps the mind active. During the day, urgency is spread across tasks. At night, urgency condenses around internal material. Condensed urgency feels heavier. The stillness of the body can also increase mental activity. When the body is active, mental energy disperses through movement. When the body is still, mental energy circulates internally. That circulation can feel like mental restlessness. The mind may jump from one topic to another, not because each topic is important, but because momentum has built. Momentum sustains itself in quiet spaces. The more you notice the thinking, the more present it feels. The more present it feels, the more significant it seems. Significance keeps attention locked. Attention keeps the loop alive. Yet beneath the movement, the body remains safe. The room remains unchanged. Nothing external is happening. Only internal simulation continues. Overthinking at night is a mind with space. Space amplifies what it holds. And when it holds uncertainty, uncertainty feels larger. Not because it is larger, but because it is alone in the silence. There is also a psychological pattern that strengthens nighttime overthinking. The mind is more sensitive to unresolved identity questions when the world becomes quiet. During the day, you are engaged in roles. You act as a student, a colleague, a friend, a partner. These roles provide structure. Structure reduces self-doubt. At night, roles dissolve. You are no longer performing for anyone. Without external structure, the mind may turn toward self-evaluation. It may ask whether you are becoming the person you want to be, whether you handled something well, whether you are moving in the right direction. These are not small questions. They carry emotional weight. When they appear in silence, they feel amplified. Overthinking at night often blends practical concerns with identity concerns. A small mistake becomes connected to self-worth. A future decision becomes connected to long-term direction. The mind links one uncertainty to another. Linking creates patterns. Patterns feel meaningful. Meaningful thoughts hold attention longer. Attention strengthens emotional tone. You may notice that nighttime overthinking feels more personal, less about logistics, more about significance. That is because reflective networks are more active at night. The brain begins integrating experience into identity. Integration requires review. Review can become rumination if it has no stopping point. During the day, external events provide stopping points. At night, there are fewer boundaries. Time feels open-ended. Open-ended time allows thoughts to stretch. Stretching makes them feel larger. When a thought stretches without interruption, it can feel endless. Endlessness creates a sense of being stuck. Being stuck increases discomfort. Discomfort encourages more thinking. The cycle reinforces itself. Yet beneath this cycle is something simple. The brain is trying to maintain coherence. It wants your experiences to make sense. It wants your actions to align with your values. It wants your future to feel predictable. These are natural desires, but when pursued in darkness and fatigue, they can feel overwhelming. The room remains quiet. The body remains still. The mind continues adjusting, not because it is broken, but because it has space to explore what usually remains in the background. Night also removes distraction from emotional undercurrents that were present all day. During waking hours, attention is constantly redirected. Notifications interrupt. Conversations shift focus. Tasks demand completion. Even background noise occupies part of your awareness. These layers of distraction act like insulation. They prevent emotional currents from being fully felt. When night arrives, insulation disappears. The environment becomes simple, dark, still, uncomplicated. In simplicity, subtle emotion becomes clearer, and emotion fuels thought. Overthinking often begins not with logic, but with feeling. A slight tension in the chest, a small sense of unease, a faint discomfort about something unfinished. The mind then searches for the source. It scans recent memories, recent interactions, upcoming plans. It tries to locate the cause of the sensation. If the cause is not obvious, the mind generates possibilities. Possibilities multiply quickly. What if I forgot something? What if tomorrow goes badly? What if I misunderstood that conversation? Each possibility carries emotional tone. Tone strengthens attention. Attention deepens analysis. Analysis sustains wakefulness. The brain prefers clarity. When clarity is missing, it continues searching. Searching feels necessary. Necessary thoughts feel urgent. Urgency keeps the nervous system slightly activated, even if the activation is subtle. At night, subtle activation feels louder, because there is nothing masking it. There is also something about lying in the dark that encourages mental wandering. Without visual reference points, the brain relies more on internal imagery. Internal imagery can become vivid. Vivid imagery strengthens emotional reaction. If you imagine an uncomfortable scenario clearly, your body responds as if it were happening. That response reinforces the belief that the scenario is important. Importance justifies continued thinking. The loop sustains itself. Overthinking rarely feels intentional. It feels like the mind pulling you along. One thought leads to another, then another. Time passes without clear direction. But beneath the movement, the body remains safe. The room remains unchanged. Nothing external is demanding action. Only internal simulation continues. And simulation in silence feels powerful. There is a specific mental network that becomes more active when the environment grows quiet. It is often called the default mode network. This network activates when you are not focused on a task. It supports memory, imagination, self-reflection, and future planning. During the day, task-focused networks suppress it. At night, when tasks end, it becomes dominant. When the default mode network is active, the mind naturally drifts. It replays past events. It imagines future possibilities. It reflects on identity. It evaluates social experiences. This drifting is not a malfunction. It is a normal shift in mental mode. But when combined with fatigue and silence, it can feel like overthinking. The default mode network is closely tied to autobiographical memory. This means nighttime thinking often feels personal. It connects present worries to past experiences. A small uncertainty tomorrow may link to an older memory of embarrassment. A simple decision may connect to long-term self-image. These connections happen quickly, often beneath conscious awareness. When thoughts connect across time, they feel larger, more meaningful, more emotionally charged. Emotion strengthens neural activation. Stronger activation makes thoughts harder to ignore. The mind then attempts to resolve the activation. It analyzes. It revisits. It reframes. But analysis in a tired brain is less efficient. Without strong executive control, thoughts circle rather than conclude. Circular thinking feels like being stuck. Being stuck increases frustration. Frustration increases alertness. Alertness delays sleep. The brain believes it is solving something important, but often it is revisiting the same unresolved uncertainty. Nighttime overthinking is rarely about catastrophic danger. It is about ambiguity. Ambiguity activates prediction systems. Prediction systems stimulate attention. Attention sustains mental activity. Mental activity keeps the mind awake. Yet none of this indicates something is wrong. It indicates the brain is operating in reflective mode without external interruption. Reflective mode is powerful. In daylight, it feels productive. In darkness, it can feel overwhelming. The difference is not the thought itself. It is the absence of competing input. When nothing external occupies awareness, internal processes feel amplified. An amplification and silence feels intense. Overthinking at night is also connected to how the brain processes uncertainty over time. During the day, uncertainty competes with action. You respond to emails. You attend classes. You move through responsibilities. Action temporarily reduces uncertainty. It creates a sense of progress. At night, action pauses. Progress becomes abstract. Tomorrow exists but cannot yet be influenced. This gap between awareness and action creates tension. The brain does not like open loops. An open loop signals something incomplete. Incomplete things draw attention. Attention keeps the loop active. You may notice that nighttime overthinking often focuses on future events, conversations that have not happened yet, decisions not yet made, outcomes not yet determined. Future-oriented thinking is tied to the brain's predictive machinery. Prediction evolved to reduce threat. If the brain can anticipate something, it feels more prepared. Preparedness feels like safety, but anticipation without real-time feedback can become excessive. Without new information, the brain fills gaps with imagination. Imagination tends to skew toward caution. Caution favors negative outcomes. Negative possibilities feel more urgent. Urgency sustains thought. There is also something about darkness that increases abstract thinking. In dim light, sensory detail decreases. When sensory detail decreases, abstract processing increases. Abstract processing is less grounded in the present. It drifts toward meaning and possibility. Meaning and possibility can become heavy topics at night. Questions about direction, purpose, consequences. These questions carry emotional weight. Weight feels heavier when the body is tired. Fatigue reduces cognitive flexibility. Cognitive flexibility allows you to shift perspective quickly. When flexibility is lower, thoughts feel fixed. Fixed thoughts feel harder to release. The mind may attempt multiple reframes, trying to land on one that feels secure. But security through imagination is fragile. Without concrete feedback, the brain keeps adjusting. This adjustment can feel endless. Yet beneath the endlessness is something simple. The brain is trying to create certainty in an uncertain moment. Night is full of uncertainty. Tomorrow is undefined. The body is still. The environment is quiet. In that stillness, prediction systems become louder. And louder prediction feels like overthinking. Another layer of nighttime overthinking involves emotional memory. Emotional memories are stored differently than neutral ones. They carry sensory detail, tone, physical sensation. When the brain is preparing for sleep, it begins organizing these memories. Part of that organization involves reactivation. Reactivation means briefly bringing the memory back online. When it comes back online, it may feel fresh again, not because it is happening now, but because the neural pathway is active. At night, this reactivation can blend with imagination. A past event may merge with a future prediction. A memory of discomfort may attach to tomorrow's uncertainty. The mind links them automatically. Linking strengthens emotional tone. Emotional tone strengthens attention. Attention keeps the memory active longer. You may notice that certain themes repeat at night. Not every memory, only the ones that carry emotional weight. The brain prioritizes what felt important. Importance is often defined by emotion. If something felt embarrassing, uncertain, exciting, or painful, it may resurface. This resurfacing does not mean you are stuck. It means your brain is consolidating. Consolidation sometimes requires brief re-exposure. During the day, these brief reactivations go unnoticed. At night, they feel larger because nothing interrupts them. The room is quiet. The body is still. Internal imagery becomes clearer. Clear imagery strengthens feeling. Feeling increases perceived significance. Perceived significance sustains thought. This cycle can make it seem like the mind is choosing to focus on certain topics. But often, the choice is automatic. The brain follows emotional signals. It scans for what feels unresolved. Resolution reduces activation. Unresolved material keeps activation slightly elevated. Even if the activation is subtle, subtle activation in darkness feels amplified. Not because it is dramatic, but because it is alone. Overthinking at night is rarely chaotic. It is patterned. It circles around themes: belonging, performance, future safety, self-worth. These themes connect deeply to survival and identity. When they surface in silence, they feel important. And important thoughts are hard to dismiss. There is also something subtle about time perception at night. During the day, time is segmented. Meetings begin and end. Classes have structure. Tasks are scheduled. Time feels contained. At night, time feels open. There are no visible markers dividing it. Open time creates psychological spaciousness. Spaciousness allows thoughts to expand. When a thought expands without interruption, it feels larger than it is. A 5-minute reflection can feel like something much longer, because there are no external anchors pulling you forward. This change in time perception can make overthinking feel endless. When the clock is not being checked frequently, when there are no transitions between tasks, the mind loses boundaries. Boundaries usually limit thought. Without boundaries, thoughts stretch. Stretching creates the feeling of being stuck inside them. You may also notice that nighttime thinking feels more existential, less about small logistics, more about meaning. Meaning requires abstraction. Abstraction increases emotional tone. Emotion makes thoughts feel heavier. The brain, sensing open time and limited sensory input, leans into reflective processing. Reflective processing is valuable. It integrates experience. But when mixed with fatigue, it can lose direction. Direction requires energy. When energy lowers, reflection becomes circular rather than linear. Linear thinking reaches conclusions. Circular thinking revisits. Revisiting feels unproductive. Unproductive effort increases frustration. Frustration increases alertness. Alertness keeps the cycle alive. There is also the awareness of vulnerability. When you are lying down in darkness, your posture signals rest. Rest signals openness. Openness reduces defensive tension. Reduced tension makes internal states more noticeable. Thoughts feel closer. Closer thoughts feel more personal. More personal thoughts feel harder to dismiss. But beneath all of this is something steady. The body remains safe. The room remains unchanged. Tomorrow has not arrived. Nothing external is demanding action. Only the mind is active, and the mind is active because it has space. Space amplifies internal movement. Internal movement in silence feels powerful. But power does not mean danger. It simply means there is no distraction. As overthinking continues, something subtle begins to change. The intensity that felt sharp earlier starts to lose its edge. Thoughts may still appear, but they do not carry the same urgency. The mind grows tired of circling the same material. Repetition eventually reduces emotional charge. What felt pressing begins to feel familiar, and familiarity softens impact. You may notice that the scenarios are less detailed now, less convincing. They arise, but they fade more quickly. This shift happens naturally, not because you forced it, but because the nervous system cannot sustain heightened activation indefinitely. Activation rises, then it lowers. The body prefers equilibrium. When there is no real external threat, equilibrium slowly returns. The mind may still attempt small adjustments, a final review, a final prediction, but each attempt carries less energy, less insistence. The room remains still. The darkness remains unchanged. Nothing external has moved. This constancy sends subtle signals of safety. Safety allows the nervous system to loosen. When the nervous system loosens, thought loses intensity. It becomes less structured, less driven, more fragmented. Fragments are easier to release than full narratives. You may notice longer pauses between thoughts, small gaps of quiet. Gaps expand when not interrupted. Overthinking thrives on momentum. When momentum weakens, silence expands. Silence does not need to be created. It emerges when effort decreases. The mind does not stop abruptly. It slows, gradually, naturally. The earlier need to control tomorrow feels less immediate. Tomorrow still exists, but it feels further away. Distance reduces urgency. Reduced urgency lowers activation. Lower activation supports rest. Nothing has been solved. Nothing has been finalized, but intensity has softened, and softening is enough. The thoughts are slower now. They still appear, but they do not build as easily. Earlier, one idea connected quickly to another. Now the connections are weaker. More space exists between them. The mind is no longer searching as actively. The urge to solve has reduced. Uncertainty remains, but it feels less sharp, less immediate. The body continues resting. Breathing stays steady. The room is unchanged. Nothing outside has shifted. That stability quietly influences the nervous system. When nothing changes, the brain receives a signal. There is no new threat, no new demand. Without new input, prediction begins to quiet. Prediction requires energy. Energy is lowering. Fatigue gently limits the length of each thought. What once stretched into long internal conversations now shortens. Sentences fade before finishing. Scenarios blur before fully forming. You may notice that attention drifts more easily. A thought appears, then dissolves without effort. The need to follow it weakens. Earlier, attention felt tight. Now it feels looser. Looser attention reduces emotional intensity. Intensity depends on focus. When focus softens, emotion softens. The mind begins shifting from analysis to sensation. You may notice the weight of the body more clearly, the rhythm of breathing, the stillness in the room. These physical anchors draw awareness outward again. Outward focus reduces mental looping. The brain cannot sustain strong internal simulation while fully relaxing into physical sensation. One mode slowly replaces the other. Thought becomes lighter, less structured, less compelling, not forced away, just thinning. The earlier momentum fades. What remains is quieter, simpler, more neutral, and neutrality allows rest to approach naturally. Thoughts are lighter now. They do not hold the same shape. They appear briefly, then soften. The mind is no longer searching for answers. It is no longer adjusting every possibility. There is less urgency, less pressure to prepare. Uncertainty feels distant, not solved, just quieter. Breathing continues evenly. The body feels heavier, supported by stillness. The room remains unchanged. Nothing is happening, and that constancy matters. Without change, the nervous system relaxes further. Prediction slows. Review slows. Imagination becomes faint. A thought may begin, but it does not continue far. It fades before it gathers detail. Attention loosens. It no longer grips each idea. There is space between mental movements, longer pauses, longer stretches of quiet. The earlier intensity feels further away, as if it belonged to a different moment. The mind grows less interested in tomorrow. Tomorrow feels distant, abstract, unnecessary for now. Nothing requires action in this moment. Nothing demands preparation. The body understands this, and when the body understands, the mind follows. Overthinking weakens when it is no longer fueled, and it is no longer fueled. What remains is simple awareness, soft, uninvolved, present, and gradually settling. There is little momentum now. Thought does not travel far. It begins, then fades. No need to follow, no need to continue. The body rests more fully. Breathing is slow, even, unnoticed. Uncertainty feels light. It does not press. It does not demand. The mind is no longer revising tomorrow. It is no longer rehearsing. Prediction has thinned. Attention is softer, wider, less focused. A thought appears, then dissolves before meaning forms. Emotion is quiet, almost neutral. The earlier intensity is gone. Nothing remains urgent. Nothing remains unfinished. The room is still. The darkness feels calm. There is no movement outside. No movement required inside. Only steady breathing and quiet awareness. Thought continues to lose structure. Fragments drift, then disappear. What remains is simple presence, light, uninvolved, settling. Nothing gathers now. No review, no prediction. Thought flickers, then fades. There is no need to respond, no need to follow. The body rests, breathing continues, slow, even, unforced. Uncertainty is neutral, barely noticeable. Awareness feels thin, open, uninvolved. A fragment appears, then disappears. No continuation, no momentum. The room remains still. The darkness is calm. Nothing requires attention. Nothing needs preparation. Only quiet, soft, steady. Settling further. There is no movement now. No rehearsal. No adjustment. Thought fades before forming. Breathing remains steady. Slow, even. The body is heavy. Supported. Uncertainty is distant. Soft, unimportant. Awareness feels wide. Unfocused. Uninvolved. Nothing begins. Nothing continues. The room is still. The darkness remains unchanged. Only quiet, gentle, stable, and thinning. Nothing forms now. No review. No prediction. Breathing continues. Soft, even. The body rests fully. Emotion is quiet. Uncertainty has no edge. Awareness is thin, open, still. Nothing requires thought. Nothing asks for meaning. Only quiet, unbroken, steady, settling. There is no return now. No forming thought. No rehearsal. Breathing continues. Slow, even, unnoticed. The body is still, fully supported. Nothing is unfinished. Nothing requires preparation. Uncertainty is quiet, soft, distant. Awareness rests, light, open, uninvolved. Nothing begins. Nothing continues. Only stillness, stable, complete.